Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call this regular meeting of the Burnsville City Council to order. It is our tradition to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have announcements for our upcoming meetings. Regular council meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, December 18th and Tuesday, January 8th. 2019 at 5:30 p.m. We have a work session that's scheduled for Tuesday, December 11th at 5:30 p.m. And tonight we will have the last part of our Truth and Taxation meetings, and we will adopt the budget and the final tax levy this evening at 6 p.m. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the council on an item that is not on the printed agenda and not an application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council? Anyone? Seeing no one, we will move on. The next item is for emergency items only, and this is additions to the final agenda. Ms. Hardy, are there any emergency items from staff?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Members of the council? Okay. And now we are at the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of items that is considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. However, an item can be removed from the consent agenda for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes an item on the consent agenda to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? Yes. Mr. Solner?
Yes, the Buck Hill.
Okay.
Item P.
That is P. P is being removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there any other items? Ms. Hardy?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Members of the council? Okay. May I have a motion for the balance, please?
Motion to approve. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Item P is the application of Buck Hill, Inc. for a PUD amendment to allow temporary outdoor concert and related events held outside of a permanent amphitheater located at 15400 Buck Hill Road. Ms. Dean, do you want to set it up, and then Mr. Solmer can speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. So at the Planning Commission meeting, Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0 of the item. That's why it was before you on the consent agenda. Buck Hill does have concerns with 3 of the items. There was a letter that was distributed to you, council. In red, there were items that Buck Hill agreed with, and then other items that they wish to perhaps make modifications to that Planning Commission recommendation.
Okay.
I do have the proposed changes available on a slide if you wanted to talk through any of them. I can state that the last item regarding lighting, Buck Hill does not have as many concerns with. They would like the end time related to the lighting to correspond with the end time of the concert itself.
Okay. You want to put those items up, and then we can have Mr. Solner speak to it. And we do have 2 citizens who wish to speak to the same item also.
So specifically, condition number 3 regarding noise testing, the Planning Commission recommended that noise testing be conducted within the last hour of each concert. Buck Hill doesn't agree with that specific recommendation. They, however, would like to spot check 3 at 3 different periods throughout the concerts.
And not just one time.
Correct.
Okay.
And just a note, we're bound by MPCA regulations. We reference that in our
Sure.
city code. And how sound is measured, it's at the receiving land use. And so that's something to keep in mind as you're thinking through this condition and hearing any testimony or discussion. The decibel level that's referenced within the MPCA, it's 65
Yes,
decibels.
levels.
It drops at 10 o'clock to 55 decibels. And so from a noise-only lens, you can certainly end a concert at any time. You just have to stay within those decibel levels to be legal and match the rules per the MPCA.
Sure.
We do have a noise consultant on hand if there's any specific technical questions that arise.
Yeah, okay. What's the next one?
The next one is related to the time.
Okay,
Buck Hill would like to end at 10:30 PM essentially. The Planning Commission had put regulations on the end time to 9:30 Sunday through Wednesday, and then 10 PM Thursday through Saturday. Buck Hill would like to essentially end at 10:30 PM. And as a reminder, that noise level of 65 decibels cuts off at 10 PM, where it drops to that
Sure.
55 decibel level. So as staff was initially putting together these recommendations, we wanted to coincide those noise levels with the end time, to have a period where it could be easily monitored, easily referenced, and so that we didn't necessarily have to go out and test noise. It's a clear cutoff time.
Yep.
And so that's condition number 9. And then item number 10 is related to the stage lighting, and this is the one where Buck Hill would like to correspond that with the end time versus ending when the concert, or ending, let's see here, sorry. The stage lighting would end immediately after each show versus, well, I'm getting mixed up here. Stage lighting would end immediately at the end of each show and respect the times mentioned above in item 9, so,
okay.
rather than ending early, essentially.
So in our background, we saw that there were concerts throughout, not only in our city, but in neighboring cities that go till 10:30. Fire muster goes till 11 here on our campus. And the zoo goes till 11:30. And Lakeville, the same thing, Prior Lake. So when we looked at this last year and this year, can you speak to the 9:30? I mean, we're stepping it up, but how did you arrive at just saying 9:30?
So we tried corresponding the end time with the MPCA regulations, looking at it strictly from a noise lens. But then there's also other considerations. Whenever you're approving a land use clearance, there's things to think about regarding traffic, other impacts to neighboring properties. That also went into the thought. But the main correlation was in regards to the decibel level and making sure things were buttoned up and wrapped up by that time. Again, as stated before, you can certainly have a concert, go till 11, go to 2 a.m., go till
Yeah.
4 a.m., as long as you're within those noise regulations,
Sure.
you're still okay. Again, there's other things to think about,
Yeah,
but
because there's atmospheric pressure. I remember when we were doing the amphitheater, those reports looked at all of the different conditions. So do we have a noise consultant when the fire muster is playing their music? How do we regulate that?
Mayor, I'm unaware if we've ever had a noise consultant related to the
Okay, I'm just trying to
fire
see
muster.
that we're looking at treating everybody equitably, because we also have concerts in the heart of the city. So do we have noise consultants also?
I'm unaware if we do.
Okay, I just wanted to understand, so everybody understands that we have a level playing field on all of these things.
With
So-
if I may interject, with the specific request, it's a land use clearance,
Yes.
however. So any recommendations
Sure.
are recorded with the property and stay with the property as an approval.
No.
Whereas some of the other events are done through a permit or maybe a one-day type of request or event.
I understand. I understand the land use piece, but I also understand the noise and all of the noise level and the decibel level and the traffic and all of that. So that's the intent of my question. Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, yeah.
I have one question.
Councilmember Schultz?
So on the lighting, could you explain a little more exactly what is meant by the stage lighting will turn off? My concerns is there adequate lighting for safety? If there has to be equipment moved around, those types of things. By us saying stage lights and leaving that as a very open term, are we creating an unsafe situation?
Specifically, the condition is related to, in Buck Hill's request, is just the stage. And so lighting associated with the remainder of the concert, from a security standpoint, they would like to have remain on so that people can safely exit. So it would be tied to just the stage itself. It's something certainly open to modification if you feel it needs to be removed, changed, modified.
May I follow
Yes,
up?
yes, please.
So specifically on the stage, when I've seen bands play, they are removing equipment. There's changes to setups on the stage. You know, the band exits and you have persons come on to take care of that. So when I'm asking about the stage lighting, I do have a concern about people trying to clear the stage, like the stage itself. And if we have the term stage lighting, that is perhaps too broad a word and could be seen as you can't have a light on the stage.
I think the concern was associated with the concert, like the music itself, and not necessarily for lighting for people to close up speakers, take equipment off stage, that it was more related to the act that was performing and the music that was projected and having that close and correspond versus people trying to clear the stage, per se.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Keely?
Just curious, how did the whole lighting issue even come to the table as part of the conditions? I don't remember reading any concerns, so I was wondering what fostered this concern for getting the lights turned off earlier?
So this was a carryover from the 2017 Planning and Development and Interim Use Permit, and we didn't have any comments or concerns, complaints received specific to this condition. It was essentially just a carryover from before. And concern was just from more of a land use perspective that shutting down the lighting helps with ending the activity and getting people off the property so that essentially the event's over to help direct people, to their cars or to their vehicles. But again,
Yeah.
it's an item if you wanted to strike.
Yeah.
From a staff standpoint, I think it's something that we would be okay with.
You have a follow-up?
Well,
Councilmember Keely?
to me, it's a non-factor. It's not even been brought up as a concern. I think we have other concerns that we should spend our time on. I watched the planning commission meeting, and they spent an exorbitant amount of time on something that was a non-factor to begin with, so I couldn't believe it. They spent that much time on lights. I lived across the highway from Buck Hill for many, many years, and it's lit up like a Christmas tree all winter long, and the lights are on until very late for the snow grooming, et cetera. It seems to me that they have lights on for security purposes for their facility, and that doesn't seem to be even an issue, so I would strike it. It's just, I don't even think we should spend any more time on it.
Yeah.
Just take it off
I
and let them
think-
do
yeah,
what they need to
well,
do to get people out
Make
safely.
sure that when we do, when you make the motion, whoever is going to make the motion, you can make sure that's. Okay. Is there anything else before I bring Mr. Solner up?
I don't have anything else. I'm certainly here to help answer any questions, as is the rest of staff and our consultant.
Okay. Mr. Solner, please. Okay.
Good evening. Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Thank you, Regina, for that overview of kind of our recommendations that we'd like to see some modification to. Really, the three boil down to two, and the last one that you just discussed is really, it's a semantic thing, I think. It's when the show is over, the show's over.
Yeah.
And whether it's 10:03, 9:52, whatever, the lights go off when the encore is over.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to tie that together. I think that was the intent there. We do have security lighting and things like that around the facility that will remain on to get our guests out and take care of that. So thank you for addressing that one. The two more important ones, I think, are the sound levels, the decibels that everybody has a concern with, and the time that we would like to see our shows run to. In our contracts, we will have a 10 o'clock end of show for our bands. And the reason for the 10:30 is to give ourselves a little, I'll say, grace period. Whether we have a weather delay, a malfunction with technology, or just something happens and we run slightly over, that we don't have to keep coming back and having a discussion when we went to 10:07 or 10:13, or it might be, again, 9:52. We might be ahead of the 10 o'clock. We feel that on the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, is the real issue that we're talking about here too. We learned a lot from last year, and we intend to push our shows more into the weekend to respect the neighbors' weekdays, evenings as well. But a lot of people do take off work on Friday, so Thursday night is kind of the kickoff of the weekend. And if we could have our event have a little grace period between 10 and 10:30, so we can ensure that we're done by 10:30, but again, in our contracts, we'll be stating 10 o'clock. So that's the reasoning for this little, I'll say, buffer that we'd like to work into the.
Yeah, and I do know that whether it's Fire Muster or the International Festival, there's always an encore.
And that's part of it
And the
too.
ba-
I mean, hopefully
Because
the
people
bands-
don't want to leave and they want to hear a little bit more, and
Right, and that leads me into the next one. We're telling the bands 10 o'clock. We understand the noise ordinance says 10 o'clock, but the encore is the loudest part of the event, and that's a very short period of time where, again, they're potentially the loudest, period of the event right at the end. And if that happens because of a weather delay that we were pushed back and we're at 10:12, and now we have to lower the levels, and we just want the guests to have a great experience, and we want to have the ability to end the show properly and at the 10 o'clock mark, but have a little wiggle room. So.
yeah. Mr. Solner, when you're going to be monitoring the sound, is it possible that you can have someone at those points along the boundary line where you had some complaints, and that they can call back to the board, the control board, or at the speakers so that they can lower it if the sound gets above the decibel level?
Absolutely. I think the issue is when we break that 10 o'clock magic number, that's going to be hard if they're in the middle of an encore to all of a sudden drop all the volume right down for a moment or two at the end of the show. So that's where I'm kind of struggling with how do you address that. But to your initial question, yes, we intend to have staff, and we pointed out a couple logical points during the event where we think we could have spot checks professionally done in the areas to again, lock in the soundboard to a level that we feel is within the noise and the ordinance that have been set forth.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Schultz.
I have a question actually for staff on number 11. So I'm looking for clarification on this. It says to 15 business days prior to each established concert date, they will provide an approval letter and site plan from each property owner where off-site parking will be utilized. If they're having a concert on Thursday, Friday,
And Saturday.
Saturday, that means 3 separate letters. Could this not cause confusion? Rather than we're having concerts Thursday, Friday, Saturday, this is our plan?
Councilmember Schultz, I would suggest that that be provided in one letter.
Yes.
You know, Burnsville Center provides approval Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They have our permission, blah, blah, blah. I think that would be acceptable. I don't think we need to have one separate letter unless that specific property owner.
So that should be clarified in the
We just
conditions.
change the language to say concert series instead
Series.
of concert date.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the other thing, can we also then have an option there that they can subscribe to Buck Hill so that they also can see all of the concerts? So it's another method for them to be informed, rather than these flyers that go out.
Buck Hill certainly has different communications medium that they use,
Sure.
Facebook, you know, social media, newsletters. I don't know what their technology is or what their communications medium is. I'd almost want to leave that more open to them, so that they can decide, and
Okay.
as things
Okay.
change too,
Okay.
since this runs with the property.
Okay. So just make sure that you amend that, 11. Thank you. Councilmember Keeley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can we go back to the time, I believe that Dave was bringing up, the end time?
Yeah. 9. It's condition number 9.
Yes. Well, as you noted earlier in our background, Apple Valley in the zoo is 10:30, although that's isolated by there's a large buffer area, so I wouldn't count that one as much. But Fire Muster runs till 11 p.m., Panaprog runs till midnight, Rosemont till 11 p.m., and Prior Lake till midnight, and the lakefront days is, heck, that sound carries a long way. To me, it's really less about the ending time and more about the decibel level. Because I had a great interaction with Tom Burns, and I haven't met you in person, so could you raise your hand?
And Mr.
Tom
Burns is going to
yes.
be speaking.
And thank
He
Mr. Burns lives behind Buck Hill, and he provided some really great, constructive, and well-thought-out opinions. And he
Yeah.
first said, right off the bat, I want to make sure that Buck Hill adds events and is a very successful asset in Burnsville. And he noted that the first 2 nights were loud, and it might have been the flavor of the music, but the bass or whatever was intruding. But Friday night, the final night, which is a night that I attended and enjoyed a fantastic Little River Band concert, he said was awesome. He could barely hear it if he closed his door and went inside. It was
Yeah.
a non-factor. And being there and being able to talk to folks standing next to me, which I noticed, I scanned the crowd, and a ton of people were socializing while listening to the music, which is typical of an outdoor concert in that sort of venue, as opposed to sitting in a seat outdoors, like at the zoo. There's probably less conversation and socializing there, but when you're able to get up and move around, go get a beer, go get a hot dog or bite to eat, it's really a social music, almost like going to a Grateful Dead concert, which I haven't ever done, but I saw a lot of videos. And so the volume Friday night, I thought was fantastic. It was plenty loud enough, but still allowed me to talk to the person next to me. And it was an outstanding experience. So I was thrilled when Mr. Burns noted, hey, Friday night, the decibels were great. It was not an issue. I closed my door, I couldn't hear it. If I went outside, I could hear it, but when I closed my door and closed my windows, it was a non-factor. So to me, that's the target decibel level, whatever Little River Band achieved.
Absolutely.
In that particular case. And controlling the volume then, to me, releases the issue of the date or the time.
Yeah.
Like, go to 11, go to 10:30, because you're really not intruding. Now, we might still stick with your recommendation, 10, with a
10:30.
grace period of 10:30. But we already allow fire muster, and I certainly hope that this process doesn't turn around and backfire and cause undue regulation on the fire muster. But I live,
Or the International Festival.
or the National Festival, I live a good distance from the fire muster in Civic Center. I live on Travelers Trail, so I'm an entire neighborhood, several streets to the north. And when I walk out my front door, I can hear every word spoken by the band at the fire muster. So I can't imagine how it's like just a block or two away. But we don't have very many concerns, maybe because it's been around for 37 years. People have gotten used to it. They know, okay, Friday night, Saturday night, there's gonna be music. It's the big community festival, so people just adjust. And they're good neighbors, and they want the city to be successful. They want the Fire Muster Festival to be successful. They know it brings thousands of people together, and so, it's a little give and take, right? To me, that's kind of what we have here, but because you're new, you're in a situation where the neighbors are maybe even a little bit closer, although I think Civic Center's got a lot of residents very close around it, that it's more sensitive on the front end. But I also agree with you, Madam Mayor, I don't want to unfairly regulate one differently or dramatically differently than another, or we're being really unfair to you and exceptionally fair to others. So we got to find a compromise that works for everybody and that preserves the peace with your neighbors. You made it a very specific point a couple times in your comments at the Planning Commission. We're Buck Hill. We've been around since '54. We want to be good neighbors. We want to flourish. We want to add events, but we want to be good neighbors and respectable. And let's find a compromise and a way to make this work. So I appreciate your comments. So I'm okay with the 10 o'clock. I think the time is less of a factor. I think it's about the decibel level. Just
And the
making sure that
10:30
that's
grace.
managed. And the 10:30 grace, yeah. I really think it's about the decibel level. And there'll still be some people who maybe prefer symphonic music and don't like classic rock. So we're never gonna please everybody. But there was a note in one of the comments, this is an older demo. It's my demo. I'm 61. Classic rock is what I grew up with. I'm excited about these types of concerts. And I don't need it at a distortion level before I'm happy, even if it's Loverboy. I don't need it to be distorting on my ears before I think, oh yeah, this is the way Loverboy should be heard. Little River Band's volume was really great and allowed, like I said, that socialization. So I think that's, whatever Friday night's decibel was a perfect standard to go by. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Gustafson.
I'd like to add on to what Councilmember Keeley was saying. I'm good with the 10:30 closing on this. You remember the Art and All That Jazz days? We were in Nicollet Commons Park. Our stage was literally 50 yards from houses, from apartments and condos. And I don't think.
You went to 10:30.
And we went to 10:30. You got serenaded on one of the encores one time, so I mean, she did. It was Dick Coleon's birthday, so if I recall. But anyway, it's, that being said, that festival was very, very popular. A lot of people attended. The lights were on well past the 10:15 time, 10:30 time when we finally stopped, because we had to strike the stage. We had to take everything down. In fact, we had lights on to about 2 o'clock in the morning, just so we could get that accomplished. And so I don't think it's unreasonable for a 10 or 10:30 stop on the Buck Hill myself.
Okay, very good. Mr. Solner, you've heard the discussion here, but I'm going to have to ask Mr. Burns because he wishes to speak. So if you can have a seat.
Sure.
Mr. Burns?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for letting me have my say. I've heard a few things up here that I didn't necessarily agree with completely. I didn't quite say the concert noise was awesome Friday. It was better Friday, and I said it was how I expected it to be a concert at Buck Hill.
I apologize if I
That's okay.
misrepresented you.
That's okay.
It was
Kind of
great.
a minor
I was
detail, but-
really pleased that you, because I was there Friday night, that you noted the volume level was, when you closed your door, you could barely hear it, and it was not intrusive, so.
Exactly. It was at my house. I live
Yeah,
near County
near
Road 5. I live quite a
Bicycle.
ways away. People who live closer to Buck Hill might not agree with that statement.
Agreed.
I can only say how it was in my house. I have some issues also with the time shutting down later. I know that we are talking about encores and bantering that about that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency doesn't really take that into account in their regulations, do they? They don't have anything in there for encores. They say 10 o'clock, the noise goes down.
I don't think they say 10, they drop the decibel level.
Right, at 10 o'clock, the
Yeah,
sound
they just-
volume goes down.
Yeah, they drop the decibel level, but, yeah.
I read in the background material, I read one of the letters from the Pollution Control Agency that stated, specifically in terms of this project, any noise complaints stemming from a concert or other event would be the responsibility of the city of Burnsville. And to me, that means if the noise goes beyond what it's supposed to at certain hours, the city of Burnsville is setting itself up for liability. And I think Ms. Dean said at one of the meetings, civil and legal responsibility, possible lawsuits. And the way I read this is that it's the city who's in charge of policing this, not Buck Hill. And when you think about letting Buck Hill monitor their own noise levels, I look at that as an abdication of our responsibility as a city to protect ourselves from excessive sound over there and setting ourselves up for possible lawsuits. I also have some concerns about comparing Buck Hill to these other events. Buck Hill wants 10 concerts. Summer is 90 days long. Add in a few spring days, a few fall days. 10 concert nights is almost 10% of our summer. These other events that you mentioned are one-night events. This is 10 nights in our neighborhood. I don't think those things really compare. I don't think it does us any good to say the fire muster goes to 11:30, Buck Hill should go to 11:30. I just don't see the comparison. And the zoo has got a huge buffer zone. Buck Hill is right next to properties. I too would like to see Buck Hill succeed. I agree that they're an important part of this community. And perhaps there's other ways that we can help them succeed. Maybe tax breaks. If they're an important part of the whole city, maybe the city would like to step up and give them a tax break or something and spread that love around the whole city and not have it just be the immediate neighbors of Buck Hill that have to pay the price for them to succeed. Something on that, or maybe different venues. And I think I wouldn't be here tonight if they didn't fail to meet their agreement last year on the first two concerts. I understand Friday night's concert was, and as I've said, if Friday night was how the other nights were, you'd have all never heard from me, and I'm sure you would have missed that. But the fact is that it wasn't. And the first two nights were literally unbearable at our house. My wife likes to go to bed early, and she couldn't. She had to wait for the music to end. It was that loud at our house. It was like the speakers were set up in our front yard, and we live a half a mile away from Buck Hill. My point being that if they failed last year, what's the guarantee they don't fail this year? I'm not comfortable with just saying, go ahead and do it, and boy, we hope you're quieter this year. I'd like to see some teeth in the measurement, the sound measurements and the regulations. I'd like to see, for instance, how are you going to measure the sound? Are you going to go out there with an iPhone and measure it at certain times, or are you going to actually have a certified sound engineer measure the sound? And to the point that sometimes the encores are louder than the rest of the concert. Well, then why don't we measure at that time? So I think that's about all I have to
Okay.
say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Adams, you also wish to speak. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Councilman, and city staff. And most off, I must greet one of my star geometry students, who I haven't seen for a long time.
Which one over there is that you're speaking of?
That would be our city attorney. I worked with
Rocco.
his dad and had him as a geometry student a few decades ago.
He just has the wrong name tag in front of him, so. Right.
I too am here to speak about Buck Hill Organization. Buck Hill Organization is one of the few items in this town that's actually older than I am. And I'm very happy that it's here and has existed for as many years as it is. When Chuck Stone started developing this, this was an asset to the community, not just to our city, but to the region. It's an entertainment venue, it's a recreational venue. Buck Hill was owned individually by the Stone family till relatively recently. Now you need to know that obviously when something changes hands, the new owners need to be able to do debt service and take care of things like that. So they need to have a reasonable source of income so this entity stays here with us. The organization, if it didn't exist, maybe terms like Lindsey Vaughn might not have been heard. Christine Koznick might not have been heard. Eric Saylor might not have been heard in this area or even in the United States. I think that alone brings value. They have tried a number of things for additional revenue. They tried the glider system. Unfortunately, it didn't really make the cash flow work. They tried Halloween events. That too could run into the ski season, so it wasn't a viable thing. What they've done is to try and bring us additional entertainment into our area. Entertainment of at least reasonable big names from the past. Maybe there'll be up and coming bands. Now, I clearly don't believe that they're probably gonna book bands that might exceed the noise level, although I'd love to see Van Halen play there and ZZ Top and Aerosmith. I think that probably is not on the agenda. But I'd be there if they were there. We have to remember things that that organization has brought to the community. The bed racing fundraising event. The fact that they are the only private entity within this city that provides an election location for Precinct 16. And they do it very graciously, and there is a pleasure to work there at that location. I want to see us do everything we can to make sure they have an opportunity to be economically viable, stay here, and be here for another 60 years for those people that are lucky enough to be walking here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Please come for Buck Hill. Yes, thank you.
Good to be here. I just have a question. How many of you up there live within a quarter of a mile of?
Okay, your name and address. We know who you are, but the people watching and the
Oh, I'm
people.
Tom Anderson.
Yes, and you live at Slater.
I'm sorry,
Your address, please.
1719 Slater Lane, Burnsville.
Yes, of course.
How many of you up there actually live close enough within a quarter of a mile of this that we're talking about? How many of you? Raise your hand. 0. I have a good friend that lives there, and she gets to listen to the concert whether she wants to or not, because it's loud enough in her living room to listen to it. And I was there one night, and the pictures on the wall were actually vibrating a little bit, kind of like a mini earthquake is what was going on in her house. The second question I have, and maybe it isn't even a question, I always believe if I follow the money, I'll find out why. So I'm wondering what's in it for Burnsville, dollar-wise, for this to happen? You got to know that. You must have looked at what you were going to roughly take in. Are you sharing in the income?
No, not
Flat
at
rate?
all.
Flat rate?
No,
Nothing.
nothing.
I don't
This
believe
is-
that, but
Well, Whether you believe it or not, Mr. Anderson, the city gains nothing. But the state perhaps does with the sales tax.
Well, you get a piece of that, don't you?
Nope,
I thought Burnsville had an elevated sales tax.
nope.
What you were talking about, right? So,
Yeah, we're talking about it.
yeah. Okay, well, then I was wrong on that one, but I still say, go spend the night with somebody there some night. Stay the night and watch what happens when the pictures start vibrating on the wall. And it's okay if you love the music, but if it ain't your favorite, you get to listen to it anyway, so. I think it's just asking too much of people that never bought their house with the intention of listening to that kind of stuff all the time, so. And it's very different than the one you're talking about, that you talked about. That's only 2 nights out of the year. Anybody can live with that, so that's very different. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anyone else? Yes, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Bernard. I live at 15287 Stonewood Court, which is at the top of Buck Hill, just to the side of the Tubing Hill. And I would say that on behalf of my neighbors and that, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. One, talking about the sound. I know Councilmember Keeley really enjoyed it and that. I would say that for those people that live in the townhome community and beyond, the sound is very loud. I'm not sure if when they're talking about doing testing of the sound, I think I read that it would be during the sound check. And that's not really an accurate reflection of doing any type of testing because you haven't added 4,500 people. You haven't added what the band sounds like when they really get rocking. Most sound checks, are pretty laid back and they're not at the height of their performance. So I think it would be unfair to say that that would be a good place to do the sound check at. I think it should be done throughout the night and especially at the end of the night. I mean, I love concerts too, but I think if an encore is going to go crazy, how do you prevent at 10 o'clock if there's an encore and if the people are screaming or whatever, to say, hey, we don't care, we're just going to do what we're going to do and let it go on till, whatever. Or I'd really hate to see lights up until 2 a.m. or whatever just because it's, it's a fun happening night. Yeah. I mean, they're, as homeowners and taxpayers, you also have to be respectful to us in the fact that, yes, we did not sign up for concerts. I don't have a problem with Buck Hill operating that or doing some concerts, but I think it is, to be a good neighbor also and respect those around you would be extremely important for that. And then also, I'm sorry I came in a little bit late. I apologize for that. But if there was going to be folks that are just showing up if they didn't sell 4,500 pre-sale tickets, I would just want to make sure that if they wanted that option to happen all the time, that they had security available for 45 or 5,000 attendees to the concerts. So, and I would have to agree that, I'm not sure how it can be a set time. Is 10:30 the end? What happens? 10:30, they pull the plug on the speakers. Is it 30 minutes later or 1 hour later that the lights go down? Rather than making a really rash decision or something based on your personal experience there, really take a moment to think about the taxpayers because I think, we're the ones who are right at the top of the hill. So.
Mr. Solner said that their contracts with the entertainers are 10.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
And is that including the encore then?
No, that's why because the technical and weather and encore, that's why they're asking for that 30-minute grace.
Okay, so.
Yeah, but the contracts are for 10 o'clock.
Okay, and lighting would be off at what time?
Well, as soon as they break down. And so I think according to the amendment that was suggested by council members, it'll be like at 10:30.
Okay.
The stage lighting, because, the hill is usually during the wintertime, the lights are
Right,
on
yep.
till,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, so,
That's-
yeah.
okay. And then, I'm sorry I didn't miss about notifying us of when the concerts would be. One thing that would be important to us, and I don't need to have something mailed to me or what, maybe it could be listed on the city website or on their website, in, the 1st of
Why don't you
April.
subscribe to their website and like their Facebook page, because they'll have all of that information. I just looked at their website. You have an updated website, and you can get all of that information.
That,
So
okay, because,
that, or else the flyers that will come out.
okay,
Yeah.
right,
You
'cause
wouldn't want the flyer if you're not checking your front door.
that's,
If you're like a lot of us, you go through
Correct.
the garage and don't see the
and
front door.
advance notice would be important if you're planning a special barbecue or a 25th anniversary celebration,
Yeah.
et cetera. So, thank you very much, and I hope you'll take it into consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Linda Stout. I live at 15,000 Windermere Lane, a half mile from Buck Hill. I didn't know about this concert series. The first time I knew about it was the first chord of the concert. And I didn't know where this was coming from. I thought it was over by the apartments out on the street somewhere. It was so loud and so disrupting. I couldn't hear my TV. I couldn't talk on the phone. And I had a company that night. And we had to, it was like sitting in a bar. Couldn't hear very well. It surprised me that Buck Hill would be a place for a concert because it's surrounded by residential areas, neighborhoods, people who live there, who have lives, who, might have something planned outside for the summer. It's summertime, actually, we are the ones who are going to pay the price for this entertainment. I think Buck Hill could do a better job with entertainment during the summer. If they want to do that, why don't you build a place for it so that we don't have to be reminded or constantly listening to these things. 10 concerts is way more than enough concerts. One would be way more than enough. For the disruption it causes, the traffic jams it's going to cause, for the types of people who come to these things. They're there to have fun. They're going to be drinking. They're going to be loud and boisterous. We're going to have drugs. We already have drugs in our neighborhood. It would just be an increase in those activities that we really don't need. I just don't think that we should be the ones who are making Buck Hill thrive. I looked at this map that has the little red dots on, that 13 people called and complained. And as I was looking at this, I was looking at it's like a plat map, all the little areas here, all those residential homes, all those families in there. And this extends at least a mile out. They could hear this a mile away. And I'm an artist, and I learn what the rules are. But the trick is to know when to break them. And these people are going to break the rules. It's just the way it is. They're not going to be set to any time limit. And who's going to pay for that? We are. You're not. You don't live around there. I want my neighborhood to be peaceful and quiet, and it isn't already. It's noisy. I am also concerned about property values, how the property values are going to be affected by this. I wouldn't want to be moving into an area that has disruptions, noises, somebody else's music, which is actually noise to me. If I want to make music, I'll play it at home. I don't expect anybody else to like it, so I keep it quiet. I really don't want to hear these concerts. I'm also a musician, and I love music. It's not that I don't love music. And I also wish that Buck Hill will do well, but not with this concert series. This is not the way to go. Too many people, too much noise, too much alcohol, et cetera, et cetera. I think they could have also done better in the notification process. And also 350 feet, that's what, 7% of a mile to notify people? That isn't a great thing. All of us should have been notified that this was going to be happening in the future. Like I said, the first time I realized it was that first chord, and I was really disgusted. As far as property values go, you know, I don't think that anybody would want to move into this place. And I can see that a lot of people are going to move out and maybe foreclose on their house. And then you'll have empty houses. What happens in empty houses? I know firsthand what happens in empty houses because it happened to me. The other things that go on as far as musical entertainment, they're only a weekend or, you know, a couple hours. And I don't think that we have to put up with the whole summer because I don't think 10 concerts is enough for these people. They're going to want more and more and more. And I don't want to spend my summer listening to somebody else's noise. So I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay, thank you. Mr. Solner, you have a sound engineer with you this evening?
Correct.
Okay. So one of the things is that, can you please come to the podium? Because if I heard you both correctly, and that you were going to measure throughout the night rather than just at the beginning and at the end? Yeah, Mr.
Yes.
Solner, you can come. So, okay, yes. Okay. So someone asked if your measuring meter is your cell phone or do you have a sound measuring instrument?
We have a calibrated professional sound pressure level meter.
Okay. And that you have said that you would measure it at the beginning and throughout the evening and also at the end.
And even more importantly, we would measure during sound check because in my experience, and I've been a touring audio engineer, and I am a professional audio engineer, a national touring act sound engineer is always, during sound check, going to push that system as hard as he can to find out where his limits are. And then he backs down from there. So I thought it would be most important to measure then, because then we have a measurement up in the neighborhood. And we can then dial back the system and put a hard limit on it to where it cannot exceed that maximum threshold.
Okay. So one of the things that I heard Mr. Burns address is that how do we know then that you're staying within limits? Because he talks about that we're the regulating government unit. So is that something that you can communicate with our staff?
Yes. What Dave and I had discussed is we would take measurements during the show, and at whatever points are deemed important to measure at, we could document those measurements, and if the council wanted, they could be reported to the council as well.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, it's our staff is going to be, they take care of, they enforce, they're the enforcer. So, you know, but the thing is that learned from last year, continue to improve with some of the issues that have been addressed by our residents. And then we'll go from there. I'm glad to hear that you're going to make several tests throughout the evening.
That, to me, seems to be the most common sense.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Faulkner?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, just want you to know it's my understanding, and we have the sound folks here, the MPCA guidelines are average on the hour.
That's right.
Not a peak. So they can be really high for 5 minutes, really low for 55 minutes. So a spot check, while it's good, it won't tell us if they're in compliance or not with MPCA
Yeah.
guidelines, just so you're aware.
Yeah, and also MPCA also takes into consideration atmospheric pressures and wind and all of those kinds of things. But as you say, it's not, yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mr. Solner and the engineer? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Keeley, did you have a question for Mr. Solner?
No, just a comment. Because I think this all revolves around the decibel level, to Ms. Faulkner's point, what process can we follow to ensure that that average is achieved? I mean, other than what we have in place, or is there a way, without having somebody
Yeah.
monitor every 15 minutes?
Ms. Faulkner? Yeah, because the basic.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the best way to do that is to have constant sound monitoring. And that was what the planning commission talked about for quite some time, and that's where they landed on the last hour, because presumably the last hour would be the loudest.
Yeah. But that, yeah, and that was for, if I understand the discussion, that that would be not our cost, but the cost to Buck Hill.
Correct, that was the condition they recommended.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, Councilmember
I guess
Keeley.
I want to comment on some of the feedback that we got, because I take it to heart, and I think all of us do. There's a concern, and I agree, Ms. Burns and the other folks, it's difficult to compare a potential, and they're only planning on 3 concerts next year, maybe a couple more, to compare 10 to 1 or 2, like the Fire Muster is just 2 nights, Friday and Saturday night. And so it is a difference, and I think that's kind of why we have these meetings, why we have to have this discussion, why we need to hear from the public, because it might end up being a little bit of give and take. More sound monitoring to ensure that that sound decibel level average is hit, so we can have the kind of, like a Friday night, as I spoke to, experience for everybody, as opposed to Tuesday and Wednesday night, which were different bands, and apparently the decibel level was much higher. To me, it all comes back down to managing that sound level. And to me, if there's a desire to go later or to have more concerts, the sound is the key. I don't think lights are an issue. Traffic is well managed. Parking, there is some concerns brought up by some folks on some what do we call those concert bombers who parked in the neighborhood or tried and walked up the back of the hill so they could attend a free outdoor concert. That needs to be addressed by the presenter to make sure that these people don't do that. They stay out of the neighborhood and they don't encroach on the backside of the hill, walking through neighborhoods to get there. I think that's a concern if I live there. But I still, as I said earlier, it all comes down to managing the decibel level. To me, that's the cure for everything. Traffic lights and all that become easier to manage if we're not intruding sound-wise into people's homes to the degree that we might today at the Fire Muster, but for 2 nights.
Okay, Councilmember Schultz.
Although the Fire Muster and other events are 1 night.
2 nights.
Yeah, actually 2 nights, yeah. I do have a concern on setting these sound check compliance if we're not doing that to other concerts. Does this then set the precedent that we need to do that, to be fair, to any other event that has noise, whether it is a concert or not a concert, but has the potential for having noise? Because when you get to evening time and it drops to 35 decibels, that's not even a concert. That's a very low decibel level for compliance. So does this now mean if we adopt this, we will be looking at this for all of our events?
So we certainly work on a complaint basis for the Buck Hill concerts. I think that's a policy decision that council would have to, bring up maybe at an all-day work session, how they want to handle other types of concert events. Certainly on our Parks and Rec community application, community event application, we do ask if people have amplified sound, the hours of operation, and we do note the MPCA regulations. But again, it may be a policy decision that you want to address at a later time. This is before us because it's a land use
Land use.
clearance.
Right.
But something to consider.
Yeah, and to follow up,
Okay, yes.
because even where I live, like if there is a Burnsville High School football game, I know the score. Like, I know the score, I know the plays, I sing the anthem. So that's my concern on looking at this very different, because sound is sound. And the effect of it on community is the effect on community. Whether we're looking at this through land use, which is why this is before us, or not. So that starts to make me pause on this. I completely understand why that would be a valuable thing to do the sound monitoring, especially when it is affecting people's quality of life. I get that. My concern is now are we looking at it on everything?
Okay. Councilmember Gustafson.
I actually had the same thought on that. It's, if we're gonna hold Buck Hill to a higher standard than we do everybody else, how is that fair and equitable? If it's a standard for Buck Hill, it should be a standard for everything that goes on outdoors that requires amplified sound.
Mr. Brokaw.
Mayor, council members, the question before you, though, is limited, if you want to say that, to the application that's in front of you.
That's right.
So you do
Let's
not
just deal
have,
with
this
it.
is not changing your ordinance overall. It is changing this PUD. and
I understand
intermediate
that part, but
permit.
I'm saying if we hold them to a higher standard, then we need to hold everybody to that standard. And then we need to bring every group in here and have the same discussion with every one of those groups. They have to meet the standards Buck Hill has to meet.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying.
That's a policy,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Councilmember, that is a policy decision for you all to make.
Yeah. Ms. Faulkner.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I would just like to add, we're not talking about changing the standard. The standard is the MPCA standard. I think we're
Right, yeah.
talking about how we enforce that
That's
standard.
right.
That's what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
That's it. And so let's make sure that we just talk about the application that's before
If we're
us.
talking about monitoring all day long,
Yeah.
then everyone should be monitoring all
Yeah.
day long.
And I think that's
At
a
their expense.
So why don't we do this? We direct staff that this comes before us so that we, on a work session or all-day work session, so that we can have that discussion. But let's focus on the application that is before us this evening. Councilmember Keeley.
Just one note about the notification that was brought up. I think it's, we had this issue on an unrelated circumstance that the 350 feet, which, is that clarified, that's state standard statute?
Yeah.
So
It
state
is.
statute requires us to notify 350 feet, but sometimes that doesn't make any sense, because in this other situation, it was like right in the middle of a neighborhood, half the neighborhood got notified, the other half didn't. So people across this next door to the people who got a notice didn't get one and wondered, well, that doesn't make any sense. So could we ask that they extend it to 500 feet or to the nearest logical boundary, so we actually do a notification that makes
So
sense?
let's also then bring that to the all-day work session so that we can be a little bit more expansive than the state statute, can we not, Mr. Brokaw?
Right, Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
council members, you can certainly do that. That's it's a minimum was the 350.
Right.
Yeah.
And this would be a question for the applicant, would they be willing
Yeah.
to go to 500 feet or just draw where there's a logical boundary
Yeah.
that's closer to the 500 feet? So it encompasses everybody who's ultimately affected rather than just the 350 feet line, invisible line, which doesn't apply in some cases, does in others, right?
Okay. Members of the council, your pleasure.
This is-
Councilmember Schultz?
Somewhat have a
Yeah.
little thing here. Okay, so,
There should be an amendment
yes.
to 11. So
Yes,
what
so,
do you
okay, so
do
I'll go
for-
through this.
Here's what you do.
I'll make the motion to approve and with accepting in number 3, the applicant's counter proposal.
Which is,
I would say,
could you read
Go
it
to
for the
10.
yes,
benefit of everyone?
accepting the proposal, which is they will spot check 3 times each day, first during the afternoon sound check, sound 30 minutes into the show, final check at the start of the headliner. They will then provide staff with a report of the readings. Going to number 9, which is the time, approving the applicant's modification, which is Sunday through Wednesday. 9:30 PM is the end time, but Buck requests they extend for 30 minutes variance. Similarly, request a change for Thursday through Saturday with the scheduled band end time established for 10 PM with a 30-minute cushion to 10:30 PM. Striking number 10, modifying number 11 to change date to series, so it reads 15 business days prior to each established concert series. Buck Hill provides an approval letter and site plan from each property owner where off-site parking will be utilized.
That's a motion.
That is my motion.
Councilmember Schultz makes the motion, second by Councilmember Gustafson. Councilmember Keely, discussion.
Just a friendly amendment to item number 4 to change the 350 feet notice to 500. I'd like to actually put that in there if we can, because I think that would be logical.
I would accept that friendly amendment.
Okay, the friendly amendment is being accepted.
And seconded.
And the seconder accepts as well. So does the staff have the amendments that are put forward?
Can I just make a note about the variance statement, that we change the wording so that it's, just variance has a different meaning to it. So legally, we would just want to avoid using that term, but it's just a minor wordsmith type
Yeah,
thing.
I would
Thank
say
you.
that you work with our attorney with that, because you're going to have to bring back the findings of fact to reflect that. And then it doesn't need to be, you can just get the findings of fact, and then we'll review it and then sign it. Ms. Faulkner?
Madam Mayor, the motion is to approve the application and adopt the findings of fact. So I think if we just say with a 30-minute grace period, that was what my notes say from the discussion, we should be good.
But
Thank you.
that finding of fact is not what we have here. So we just have to make sure that we amend the findings of fact
To
reflect.
include your motion.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure,
Yes.
that there is consistency
Yes.
between the motion and the findings of fact. Okay? Okay. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Okay, thank you, everybody, for being here. We now go on to the regular agenda, and this is item number 5. Item number 5 is a public hearing to approve change in owner of device pit stop located at 1603 County Road 42 West. Ms. Collins, our city clerk, is presenting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members, good evening. SJ Group LLC has submitted an application, and this is for to change the ownership for the reseller's license for device pit stop. And an investigation has been conducted on the principal involved, and nothing was found to deny the license. All the necessary paperwork has been submitted and the fees have been paid. The name, location, and layout will remain the same as with the previous license. This is a public hearing. I stand for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Collins? This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Members of the council, your pleasure.
Move to approve?
Second.
Councilmember Gustafson makes the motion, second by Councilmember Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. The next item is Experience Burnsville's 2019 Budget and Work Plan. Presenting this evening is Ms. Amy Burrell, the Executive Director for Experience Burnsville. Ms. Burrell. And I see we have a board member in the audience.
Warren Mosier, yes. That's fine. Yeah. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This evening I'll be reviewing our 2019 strategic plan and our adopted budget by our board of directors. For our viewing audience and those here, Experience Burnsville is a destination marketing organization for the city of Burnsville. We're a convention and visitors bureau. We were established in 1987 as a 501c3 6, corporation. We're funded almost entirely by lodging tax, hospitality tax that's paid by guests that stay overnight in our hotel motels. We also receive additional funding from Explore Minnesota Tourism through marketing grants. The goal for our organization is to influence visitation to Burnsville through our marketing and promotion. Our organization has 1 full-time staff person, as well as a part-time staff person that joined our team in March of this year. And our organization is governed by a 9-member board of directors. Experience Burnsville in 2018, since we are funded primarily by lodging tax, we pay a lot of attention to our average daily rate and our occupancy. We've trended slightly higher than 2017 in our average daily rate at our hotels, which is very nice because 2017 was a really good year for our lodging properties. We did, as did other Twin Cities Metro CVBs and destinations, had a very nice bump in our average daily rate and occupancy during Super Bowl during the first quarter. Our occupancy has remained steady, even given the introduction of new lodging properties that are surrounding communities as well as the Twin Cities area. And our organization is operating within our 2018 adopted budget and strategic plan. What are the benefits of destination marketing? A lot of what we do is outside of Burnsville and the area, and our goal is to bring visitors here to spend money at our hotels, area attractions, that type of thing. So the benefits of having a destination marketing organization in the community is that we promote and market our lodging properties, our restaurants, area attractions and recreation, retailers and hospitality businesses, local and area destination driving events, and it benefits the Burnsville residents as there's much to do in the community. In 2018, we've had a very busy year. This is just a quick snapshot of the different programs and initiatives that staff has worked on. Our website really is our bread and butter, so we continue to enhance and add content to that on a daily basis. Some of that content includes blogs that we've done. So we've done 11 blogs year to date. We have another one coming out hopefully the end of this week, early next week. Social media, we've really upped our game and our social media presence and engagement via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our Facebook page has seen a 120% increase in people that like and follow our page, and that is just in one calendar year. And we're not even done with the year yet, so that's very exciting. We've spent a lot of time also on our Instagram page with our photography and images and engagement through that. Earlier this year, I attended 4 different expos in the upper Midwest area, as well as Winnipeg, to market and promote Burnsville as a visitor destination. This year, we've also worked on our email campaigns, so paid email campaigns that go out to our targeted demographic and audience. We've also done a lot of retargeting and our newsletter, which is that we do through Constant Contact on a bi-monthly basis. And with our newsletter, we've seen a 215% increase in people that have subscribed to receive our e-newsletter. So that's very exciting. This year, we did try a couple of Facebook sweepstakes. We partnered with the Minnesota Zoo and Buck Hill to offer play and stay packages, and that was a phenomenal success for out of the gate. With the 2 Facebook sweepstakes, we had 900,000 impressions that we generated through those 2 sweepstakes. So that was a huge success, and the vendor that we used thought that we blew it out of the water. So that was very exciting to hear. In addition, we do a lot of content activation, so video activation, marketing, promoting the videos that we work on to promote Burnsville as a preferred visitor destination. And this year we did a coupon booklet. We printed 10,000 copies that we distribute through our hotels, motels, area attractions, and then by request via our website or social media. And we're almost out of those. I think we have 2 boxes left to go through in the next couple of weeks. Photography, images are worth a million words or dollars, whatever you'd like to say. So we really work to enhance our visual library and our assets. Year to date, staff, along with our great photographer, Sherry, we've done 13 different photo shoots year to date, and we have another one coming up a week from today. So we'll have 14 under our belt for this year. And then staff, in conjunction with Burnsville Community Television and then internally with Bree Meyer in our office, we've produced 14 different videos throughout 2018. Also this year, we have a billboard. I don't know if anyone's traveled north on 35. going through South Lakeville. We have a billboard just short of the County Road 70 exit, and we partnered with Buck Hill there to market and promote not only Burnsville and Buck Hill, but Buck Hill as a year-round destination. And then we also have a digital board at the Ames Center, which is a new product that they've introduced this year, which is really exciting to be a part of that. And of course, partnerships. We're nothing without our partners and our stakeholders, be it our restaurants, area attractions, area CVBs. That's really key for our marketing today and in the future. I just wanted to share, because I'm very proud of the video or the photos that we've been able to capture, and just wanted to share the places that we've been so far this year taking photos. And all the images and the people that you see in the photos are friends or they're guests of whatever entity we were at that have volunteered to let us photograph their family, and then we share those images with them and get their consent. So far this year, we've been to Morgan's Farm to Table, Saigon Palace, Black Diamond at Buck Hill. We were at the Mediterranean Cruise Cafe for Salsa Night on a Saturday. That was a ton of fun. Porter Creek Hardwood Grill, Buck Hill during the winter, Jensen's Cafe. We've also been to Skateville, and we actually had the mayor out there skating with us, so that was great. We went to an apple orchard and pumpkin patch to show the family enjoying the outdoors in the fall. Roasted Pear Brunch. We were out this summer at Buck Hill to photograph the mountain bike races they have, which is a great event and spectacle to see. Med Cruise, we were back there again for a date night and also girls' night out. And then we were at JoJo's Rise and Wine. And you'll recognize our former executive director in the lower right-hand corner, Pat Rourke. In June of this year, our board of directors met for our annual planning retreat, and we brought in a facilitator, Bill Geist, to walk us through the process. And the board, through a lot of discussion and thought, has adopted 3 primary goals for our organization for 2019 and looking ahead. The first goal is to advocate for destination enhancing development. The second is to enhance the awareness, appreciation, and support of Experience Burnsville and the visitor economy. Goal 3 is to increase Experience Burnsville's capacity to enhance the impact of the visitor economy. And in your background, you had all the objectives and the suggested tactics that our board will work on, as well as staff. A couple of highlights that I wanted to point out, because this is a new strategic plan that we're introducing beginning in 2019. For the board of directors, they really want to be engaged in our mission and our vision, and to assist in, increasing the visitor experience here in Burnsville. So the board is dedicated and committed to our strategic plan and the overall governance of our organization. The board, along with staff, will continue their partnership and participation with the Burnsville Leaders Initiative. That's with the school district, chamber board, city council, and Experience Burnsville's board of directors. The board is also interested in forming subcommittees to help move the needle and increase our engagement in our community with our young professionals, our hospitality industry, whether it's some kind of event and or customer service training, and then really getting our message of what we do to market and promote Burnsville as a visitor destination with our community leaders and stakeholders. And recently, our board of directors adopted a position statement that they are in support of the city's economic development strategic plan. And then in December at our meeting, we'll be reviewing and receiving a presentation from city staff about the County Road 42 and Burnsville Center study, with the hopes that we adopt and support that initiative as well. For staff this year, we're going to stay focused and on our daily activities and really enhance everything that we're doing. A key part of what we're working on right now, we have engaged a new creative agency to help us with our brand message and our content. So we're in the process of working on that and should have some concepts available for review for our board in the coming weeks. And then during the first and second quarter of 2019, we're going to begin the process of redoing our website. So we have our vendor aligned for that, and so we're just kind of taking it step by step and working on our creative and messaging first, and then we'll move into the website. We're going to continue with all of our social media blogs, photography, videography, legislative, community engagement, and this is very exciting. We're adding a full-time staff member beginning in January to help assist with all of our marketing initiatives. A few of the budget highlights that were also in your background that I wanted to point out, that you would see the line item website redevelopment, that again, like I mentioned, is a priority in 2019 and is a significant investment. Continuing with our messaging and our branding, that's under professional fees. We're gonna really focus and stay dialed in on our content, digital, and social strategies. They've been very successful, so we wanna continue to move the needle on that. Again, our organization, we take a more conservative approach in our budgeting, so we, this year, we're trending higher than what we budgeted for lodging tax, which is great, but we sort of under budgeted, if you will, for 2018, but very conservative. You've also probably saw in the background that we included a fund balance in our income for 2019. And then, again, you'll see an increase in administration with the additional full-time employees starting in 2019. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Any questions, Councilmember Gustafson?
It's really impressive, all the things that you're doing over there.
Thank you.
It really is. How much staff do you have?
Myself and part-time with Bree Meyer, who's 20 hours a week.
So you accomplish all this with 1.5 people?
And we outsource.
Nice.
Yeah, and we have great vendors that we work
Okay.
with that have really helped.
Nice
us.
job on that.
Thank you very much.
Nice job on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Keeley?
Nice presentation, as always. Thank you. Under Goal 1, advocate for destination enhancement development. Objective D is promote and market Burnsville's destination driving festivals and events. I'm curious, are you currently on any of the festival boards, like International Festival? Do you serve on that,
Currently,
or-
I am not. In the past, I had served on the Art and All That Jazz Board, but as of now, I'm not.
Oh, and I don't know,
She's just busy with all the other stuff.
There's a
yeah,
lot going on.
Yeah.
definitely. That's a big one, I think, because, and I, just speaking on behalf of the fire muster, I think it'd be great to have the CVB involved in those boards, because they are such a huge community, gathering event, and I think International Fire Muster, whatever it might be, those could really benefit from the marketing angle that the CVB can help with. So if you have time, you can consider
Yeah.
sitting in, maybe it's not a board seat per se, or a
Yeah.
regular board meeting, but just to participate in a few to be able to help communicate and market those events. The Fire Muster, of course, gonna be in its second year of, or has concluded its second year of free admission. So that's still something that we're trying to get the word out and still grow that festival. So thank
Ms.
you.
Burrow, why don't you speak to the fact that you do stay in touch with Mr. Taylor, and that you've also been on the ground with drone to take videographer
Yes.
for the fire muster, and that you've been one of the announcers for the parade.
Yes, with Fire Muster, yeah.
I remember
I
that.
think I was retired from the parade announcing, but with last year during the 2017 event, we were at Fire Muster with our photographer and our drone person capturing footage to include in our overall My Burnsville video, and then we also created a Fire Muster Burnsville video as well. I am in contact with Tom Taylor and Mike Bruner, the marketing volunteer with Fire Muster, but as I tell our board, the more information that we can have as the destination marketing organization, the better that we can promote the events and attractions, restaurants, that type of thing. So I'm happy to take and absorb any information that's available as it relates to events.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, a motion is in order, please.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Councilmember Schultz makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much,
Thank you
and good
very much.
evening. And thank you, Mr. Mosier, for being here. Okay, the next is the review of the environmental assessment worksheet and comment for Healy Ramey project. Positive or negative declaration by the council on a need to prepare an environmental impact statement. Presenting this evening is our attorney, Mr. Brokaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. The application before you, I guess I take that back. It's technically not an application. This is not land use clearances that you're giving. That would be through any, PUD, CUP, standard development process. This instead is an EAW, and it's an environmental assessment worksheet. So the question for you tonight is whether or not to take this to the next step and request an EIS, an environmental impact statement study. So the question for you is whether or not you make a positive or a negative declaration. Positive declaration means an EIS is required. A negative declaration means that an EIS is not required.
And Mr. Brokaw, staff has reviewed all of the comments from all of the other agencies, including the county and all of that. And staff is recommending a negative declaration.
That's correct. The other agencies are required to be notified as part of an EAW process, and that is what took place here. The full report, the worksheet is within your materials, and if you want to look at specifics or have questions about any of those comments by the other agencies, we can certainly talk to the proposed developer here in the future.
Okay. Any questions for the developer? And it was very comprehensive. The developer had a technical consultant do all of the work. So members of the council, your pleasure. Councilmember Coughlin.
Motion to approve what staff recommended on
The
the
negative
negative
declaration.
declaration.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Councilmember Keeley, discussion.
Well, for the benefit of our viewing audience, because the background is intensely heavy with a lot of documentation, would it be okay to ask the applicant to just give us a brief, high-level summary of that process? So there's an oratory review of it. I mean, it was a thick book in electronic form
Yeah.
of all kinds of very
With
technical
everything, this particular council packet was 641 pages. Yours was one of those, along with the Buck Hill. But Mr. Shardlow, good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. The EAW process is really a standard 22 questions that need to be asked and answered. And then it gets distributed to 13 public agencies, and as well as being available to the public. And each one of those agencies submits comments on the EAW. And then the applicant is responsible to do responses to those comments. So it really seems to me that the question before the council, as Attorney Brokaw said, is, do you feel that you need an environmental impact statement to have information to be able to make an informed decision about this application? And I think clearly in my mind, the answer is no. The threshold for a mandatory environmental assessment worksheet is like 2/3 more than this. It's like, this is 32% of the threshold. And the other thing to keep in mind is that you have a full legislative process that lies ahead in the planned unit development. There'll be the platting process. There's the planned unit development process. You have the staff's work on that. You have the opportunity for the Planning Commission to review it and ask any questions of us. And in addition to that, the city has a recently updated comprehensive plan. You have a comprehensive sanitary sewer system plan, transportation plan, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's adequate information for the city to make an informed decision. And again, you have a full legislative action that lies ahead of you in the planned unit development, and the opportunity to enter into a planned unit development agreement to attach whatever additional conditions of approval may be needed to mitigate any potential adverse impacts. So we're very confident that we can work with you to make sure that the community is fully informed without the need for an environmental impact statement.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Coughlin.
I renew my motion.
Yeah, well, we're just in a discussion, but there is still a motion on the floor. So any other questions for Mr. Shardlow?
That was very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shardlow. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much, and good evening. The next item is item number 8, and this is the...
May I ask for a 5-minute recess?
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute recess and then come back for item number 8. So 5-minute recess.
See how the Queen is doing.
I will now reconvene the Burnsville City Council meeting. We are at item number 8. Item number 8 is the resolution adopting the 2019 budget and establishing the 2019 property tax levy and adopt the 2019-2023 capital improvement program. And presenting this evening is our Finance Director, Kelly Stry, who we keep working on budgets 12 months out of the year, but we really focus on the budget since June. Ms. Stry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. You are correct. We've had quite a number of meetings since this all began at the council level back in June. There have been 6 budget meetings since that time, which included 2 work sessions where the council had an opportunity to discuss the final details of the proposed budget. On October 24th, the city's department directors presented the department budget information that gave a lot of specifics about what kinds of challenges there are in each areas, where the efficiencies are, cost savings that have been used to offset cost increases as well. I would recommend that is a good one for the public to watch if you are interested at all in the details of where the budget goes. That is an excellent one. Your other meeting, November 13th, was a full budget overview of all the funds, more on a high-level, fund-by-fund basis. So those 2 are the most recent budget meetings, and they can all be found on the city's website under budget, so burnsvillemn.org. And if you search on budget, there's a whole list of what's happened throughout the year. Before you this evening, there will be 4 resolutions. The first 3 can be adopted in one motion. They are establishing the city levy at $34,896,674, adopting the 2019 budget totaling $106,176,665. Adopting the 5-year capital improvement plan for 2019 through 2023. This is a planning document that schedules out the public improvements for the next 5 years. And each of those projects within your capital improvement plan will come before the council individually for approval in the future as they go forward. But as a whole, the planning document is before you for adoption, is included in the budget. Then the council will recess for the EDA meeting, where the EDA will consider adoption of the EDA levy. When the council reconvenes, the council will then consider or to ratify the EDA levy as a city council, and that is the 4th and final budget resolution of the evening. Okay. So, just to reiterate here, the first item to consider is the property tax levy, and then the budget and capital improvement plan. All of the information is in your budget workbook. We did have council direction to put the property tax levy at the max tax at 4.9 and increase the allowance for property tax petitions, uncollected taxes. So you don't actually see any change in the total city budget because that number is net, a net revenue number. And with that, I stand for questions.
Any questions for Ms. Stry? We've been through this for the last 6 months. Yeah. Okay. May I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Councilmember Gustafson makes the motion.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Keeley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. And the
Nay.
motion. The clerk has the division of the House. You have 1 nay.
Yes, I think we have somebody here to speak to this item.
Mr. Anderson.
I did not have that. So,
He didn't sign it.
pardon me?
He was not signed in.
Yes. Okay, the motion was made. Mr. Anderson, did you want to speak?
Yeah.
Please. Okay,
I didn't know I was supposed to
yeah,
talk to you before.
yeah.
I sent you a letter.
Yes, and Ms. Stry did respond to you and went through all of the,
I suppose you want to know who I am again, do you?
yes,
Tom Anderson,
please. Yes.
1719 Slater Lane, Burnsville, Minnesota. I don't intend and expect you to do a darn thing about what I'm going to tell you, because you haven't in the past. I always get a very familiar answer. We've always done it that way. And I don't really like that answer, because that says you're locked into ways that don't work. I'd say something tonight, but it would be taken as racist, so I won't say it. Before I forget, you ought to say a big thank you to Michelle for what she did during the election. She taught us old people really well on a brand new system that was a real challenge for her, I'm sure, and she did a beautiful job. So thank you for that. That doesn't belong here, I know, but it's in there anyway. You say 4.9, that's not true. My taxes went up 17.8. And so when you say numbers like that, it sounds good in the press and everything, but when reality comes to you, that's not what you're doing. And then you tell me things like, we base it on the value of your property. You don't. Because when the 2009 hit, 2009, 10 and 11, my property dropped 24%. You did not lower the taxes, not one bit. Today, my house is valued 10% more than it was in 2009, and my taxes went up 17.3% this year. They've gone up every year for the last few years. So when you say that, it's it's not true that you're just raising my taxes that much. You also tell me, when I've challenged this once before, you said we just categorize everything that's important in a certain order. And the first one is police and fire protection. You kind of do that. But I get a request every year from the police department to give them a little extra money. They send it to a lot of us. And I always send it to them because I love the cops. And then you go to the next one, which is supposed to be the streets, the roads, and all this stuff. Not true again. Because when you did my streets a year ago, I paid 40% of it. You only paid 60% to do that street. So it is not high on your priority list. I don't believe that. Because if it was, you ran out of money before you ever got through that. You have a whole lot of things that you pushed in front of the things that you say are important that aren't, because you're paying other things. I've worked for companies, 2 of them, that were very successful. And about every 3 years, the president would say, get rid of 10% of your expenses. I don't care how you do it. Get rid of them. And that usually meant people, that you had to fire people. And you would think that would be a negative impact on a company, and it never was. Because typically what happens, you lose some slugs. And yeah, sometimes the slug is making the decision and they should have been gone, but they weren't. But the company functioned better after the 10% was gone. Burnsville never looks, as I can see from the outside, at cutting your budget. Never. It's always, how much more do we need? And I know you're not going to listen to this. If I ran my business when I had it like you run yours, I'd have been broke the second year. I'll give you the best example is the Ames Center. That thing is never going to make money. Never. 2 people advised the city prior to that being built, don't do it because it will not make any money. And what does the city do? They build it. Now, there's some fake stuff going on there too, where you say you're making money now, but you aren't. If you look at things like the costs of depreciation, the cost of the money you're losing because you own the property, not somebody you can tax, the fact that you didn't even count the money that you paid for that land because you said it was yours already. I don't think you count the interest that you're paying on the loan. You're not making any money on that place. And it's been 10 years, and you never will. You, in a sense, have lost probably $5 million on that place. And if I was to guess, 10% of the people in Burnsville go to that place. No more than that. They just don't. I mean, there's a whole lot of people in Burnsville that don't even know who you are. And that makes it easier for you to do the things that you do, which I believe are not helpful for the citizens of Burnsville. They really aren't. Because when I look at it and I look what you've done, I've been in that house since 94, one, which is crazy to stay anywhere that long. Never did that in my life. But I've watched this town change a lot. We had a beautiful school system when I came here in 91, and you guys are somewhat responsible for that. When you create a town that increases, that's not the right word, if you're actually inviting a different population in your city, and you're making it very, very obvious that you're inviting them. And because you probably over-invite, you end up with lots and lots of people that aren't middle class. Middle class supports this town. I live in a neighborhood that used to be full of little kids, just crawling with them. And it's in the school that's right over off of 5. And doggone it, there aren't any left. Because all of those people that were middle class, that had kids, that were about to go into kindergarten, they're gone. Because anybody that loves their kids is going to get the hell out of here if you're in that location. You got to get out of there. Either that or you got to transport your kids to another school. You guys built that. Maybe not you personally, but the council had a lot to do with the direction that Burnsville went. And you still do. It's my belief it's too late to turn it around. You got that thing rolling so fast in the other direction. People, almost everybody I know that is in Burnsville that has kids that are going to be in kindergarten are looking for a place to take them. That's sad. It is to me. So that's the end of my pitch. I've enjoyed living in Burnsville most of the time, not all the time. I don't like it. But I don't like paying for my streets being fixed, and the mayor knows that. No, that's not true. I'm okay with having them fixed. I just don't like to have to pay 2.5 times as much as my neighbors just because I live on the outside of a cul-de-sac. Not fair. She never convinced me of that, and I never convinced her. So what? We don't agree. But thanks for the time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, there's a motion and a second, and a vote was taken. And Ms. Collins, you have the division of the House.
I do, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I will now recess the Burnsville City Council so the Economic Development Authority meeting can take place. President Gustafson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will now convene a special meeting of the Economic Development Authority. And please note, all commissioners are present. Are there any additions to the final agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, and I need a motion for the approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Keeley, second by Commissioner Coughlin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. Moves us on to the regular agenda, which is a resolution adopting the 2019 Economic Development Authority levy and budget. Kelly Stride will be presenting once again.
Thank you, President Gustafson. Commissioners, the proposed EDA levy is $742,500, which is a $25,000 increase from the previous year. The levy is below the EDA allowed levy of 0.0185% of taxable market value, which would be about $1.2 million. So you are within that allowed amount. The total source of funds of the EDA fund is $1.9 million, including a $1.1 million grant from the Environmental Legacy Fund, or an ELF grant. The 2019 budget for this fund is $2.1 million. The budget includes expenditures of the ELF grant for $1.1 million, equaling those revenues. A transfer of $410,000 to the Ames Center Fund for purposes of payment of the Ames Center bonds, and expanded economic development program that was discussed during the budget process a number of times. And the 5-year plan shows a spend down of fund balance in this fund to fund the increased economic development activity. So with that, I stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Keeley,
Second.
second by Commissioner Couts. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
And that ends our regular agenda. There are no miscellaneous items. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coughlin, second by Commissioner Keeley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I will now reconvene the Burnsville City Council meeting. We are at item number 10, and this is the item that we ratify the action of the EDA. So the resolution is to adopt the Burnsville Economic Development Authority property tax levy that we just had presented to us. And a motion is in order to adopt the resolution and
Move to approve?
Councilmember
Second.
Gustafson makes a motion, second by Councilmember Keely. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Oppose.
And the clerk has the division of the House. And members of the council, that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for this evening, and there are no other items to come before the body this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Keely, second by Councilmember Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Good night, and thank you for being with us. Okay.